Check, 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 check. Okay, cool. Can you talk real quick?
Yeah. Test 1 2, test 1 2 3, test 1 2, test 1 2 3.
Good.
Oh,
okay.
I'm on here. Test 1 2, test 1 2 3, test.
Test
do you want
1,
me
2,
quieter
test 1,
or
2,
him
test
louder?
1 2.
Cool. Test 1 2, test 1 2 3. Have a good weekend, dude.
Test 1 2.
What's tomorrow?
Okay, cool.
It's just about quitting time, but not for us. We're live at Fair Play in North Park to get the weekend going. Live with the faithful as Bob Melvin and the fellas finish up the road trip with a series up in Oakland. The Aztecs take their first road trip of the season up to Corvallis. And week 2 of the NFL continues after last night's game out in Philly.
Hurts the snap, pushing the pile. Hurts, he's in. Touchdown, Eagles.
Today's broadcast is sponsored by Fair Play in North Park. A little sporty and a lot of party. San Diego County Credit Union. It's not big bank banking, it's better. Bob Jensen Air Conditioning and Heating. We are here to make you more comfortable. Promises 2 kids, creating a bright future for foster children. Now live from Fair Play in North Park, it's Jon and Jim.
San Diego and Southern California, what's going on? It is hour 1 of Jon and Jim from Fair Play in North Park, where we will be getting you ready for the weekend, including Padres baseball over the next 3 hours. Kevin Acee, it's a good day to have Kevin Acee on the show. As Darren was just saying, Kevin Acee will join us just after 5 p.m. at 5:05 p.m. By the way, loaded show. Kevin, Kyle Glazer, Baseball America, JB Long, voice of the Rams at 5:30, Paul Garrison on San Diego State, Oregon State at 4:10. It wouldn't be a big Padres story day without Jim, what I would say like oversleeping, but it's not oversleeping. It's just Jim sleeping. Of course, this story was published by 7 a.m. This expose, so to speak, and Kevin will join us to talk more about it. What Kevin wrote today in the UT about the culture of the Padres here in 2023. And by the time Jim woke up, I mean, how many notifications and messages did you have? This is literally an article that was made to, like, keep you employed for the next year. Yet you're I couldn't do anything. I thought about driving over to your place. And I was wondering, when would you go on social media? And it took you a few hours.
Yeah. So
right?
You texted me this morning.
I did.
At, let's see, what time did
Definitely
you
in the 7 o'clock hour.
8:17 a.m.
Was that the first one I sent you today?
Yeah,
okay.
8:17 a.m. You said, how can you be sleeping at a time like this when this article gets released? I responded to you at 9:40.
Okay.
I slept in today a little bit.
Okay.
And I didn't really post much on social media. I was arguing with a couple people. I don't know why I was doing that. It's the dumbest thing ever to do, especially people with like 2 followers. Like, why are you engaging? I don't know why I was, but I just post a couple quotes, and that's something to be remembered here. Quotes from this article today, and I was like, I'm just gonna wait till 3 o'clock to talk about it. Right?
Okay.
I even talked to Erin a little bit about it before she went to work today because I needed to get out of my system.
Right.
But I didn't want to put it on social media. And you know, the first thing that I noticed, because if you haven't read the article, go and read it. I mean, it's a lengthy piece. We're gonna have Kevin on today at 5 p.m. to talk about it more in depth. But John, I would be curious to hear, like, let's say, all right, on 3, name the first thing that popped to your head when you read this article.
So easy.
1, 2, 3, culture.
Yeah.
And we didn't talk about that, by the way. That is the number one thing that I saw in here, along with other things that are also just as important, but this one stood above the rest. When you see this, and I'm going to read it to you, when you hear this, think to yourself, like, that's not a good thing to hear. Kevin wrote, Manny Machado made it clear he does not believe that the Padres' culture is a problem, and for that matter, strongly indicated he does not put much stock in the importance of cultivating a culture. Quote, what is this, college baseball? He said at one point, what is this, high school? I pushed back to that quote and said, culture is everything in sports, professional sports. It is everything from the top down. Culture matters the most. Now, you might say, what about winning, Jim? If you win, then everything's going to be fine. Look what happened last year. They won. Everything's not fine. That means there's a culture problem. Culture withstands problems. It takes away issues, because if you have a good culture, you deal with those issues head front and they don't linger. Things with this franchise and organization seem to linger a lot, and they seem to linger to a point where it just destroys entire seasons. That is a bad culture. Manny thinking that culture doesn't mean anything, to me, is the biggest red flag that you could ever see from a player that is supposedly the captain of the team that you will ever see, to me.
Well, okay, a couple of things. I mean, obviously, this article is extremely damning, not because of what Kevin wrote, but because of the state of what the organization is in, and a lot of because of what you just said, which is if Manny Machado doesn't believe that culture matters, that alone means you have a bad culture. Yep. And we've talked about the culture of the Padres for months on end. I was saying in April, there's something off with this team. It's now evident. Everything we felt about this team over the last 4 or 5 months was confirmed in this piece from Kevin Acee today, including the fact, and this is, again, this isn't me saying this. This is just a factual statement based on Kevin's source reporting. Not only does Manny Machado not think there's a culture, which means you have a bad culture, Manny Machado's not a leader.
No.
He's not a leader based on what Kevin is reporting, which is they have 8 or 9 meetings. He says he's going to act in a certain way, and then he goes back to acting in a different way. And he actually started the article by talking about the fact that there's never been a more interesting dynamic at play than the Padres are facing the Dodgers at home, and nobody's doing early work for the Padres when their season is literally on the line. And the Dodgers, who have been into the postseason every single year and are 10 games better than you in that moment, have Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman doing early work. Again, actions speak louder than words, and Manny can say whatever he wants to say about him being a leader, and he does it on field. But you're not a leader when you have 8 or 9 meetings and your teammates are calling you out for not acting the way you said you were going to act based on what you said in the meetings.
Right. And I'll preface this by saying, like, and Kevin said it in his article as well, and I completely agree with him. And Dennis said it on Today with Darren. Is Manny the number one and sole reason and only reason why this team has had a disastrous year and that they're in the position that they're in? Absolutely not. Is he a big part of the reason why? I do believe that. I think that there's enough evidence here and enough things to look at to point to, if Manny Machado, and I've said this before, if Manny Machado is the leader of the captain of your team, you're probably not going to be winning many World Series. You're probably not going to have a consistent amount of winning that is needed when you have this much invested into a season, this much invested into a franchise. It's not all Manny's fault. This is a lot to do with the organization from top down, with Peter Seidler, who is now, in my mind, a problem, to AJ Preller, who in my mind has been a problem for multiple years, to the construction of this roster, to the players not performing, to, whatever else you want to say. But we've talked about it. Who is the second or third most important, influential, powerful person in this franchise? It's Manny Machado. There's no question about that. I don't need any article to tell me that he is or isn't, because I see it, I heard it, we know it. He is, as far as I can see and tell and hear, he is one of the most powerful people in this organization, only behind the owner, Peter Seidler.
How many times have I said over the last 6 months, heavy is the head that wears the crown,
A
in
lot.
reference to Manny Machado? If you're willing to reap the rewards of a contract that is among the richest in the history of professional sports multiple times, right?
Yeah.
Two sides signed it, including Manny Machado. You have to be accountable for a performance that has been this poor this year. And I'm not just talking about individual. I don't even care if Manny Machado had a quote-unquote good year, but the team had a bad year. That's on Manny Machado, who is the supposed leader. By the way, he was the second player this season in the last couple of weeks to confirm quitting this year.
Mm-hmm.
Your $350 million player, your captain, your guy who doesn't believe in culture, confirmed to Kevin that this team has quit this year when he said about a series in Seattle within the last month, I think we just didn't want it. I think overall as a group, we didn't want it as bad as Seattle did or as bad as some of these other teams. I will say that. I think that everyone's at fault. It's everyone's fault. We didn't want it as a team. It falls down to the team. That's not necessarily one player. It's not an individual sport. So I think ultimately it comes down to all of us. We should have wanted it more. I mean, tell me that's all I need to know. Soto saying we literally quit over the course of games. Manny Machado saying we didn't want it as much as a team. I mean, what else do you need to know other than the fact that this thing is completely off course? Yeah. Completely off course.
Well, dude, I've been talking about this for a while now. And I think we talked about it as recently as this past week or last week. Maybe it was on the wrap-up show, maybe Jon and Jim, but I forget. But it's, you look at Manny's years with the Padres in the last 5 seasons. It's no coincidence that when Manny has a down year, the team does not perform. And for Manny, he only thinks it's about performance on the field. He only thinks that, hey, if we perform better, everything would be fine. You can look at that and you can agree with it. And there's a part of it that I do agree with. Like, if they were performing, we're not getting articles and we're not getting, these types of things and quotes from players and talking about Manny about, culture and everything. If they're winning baseball games, we just wouldn't get that. But, that's only one part of the puzzle. How many teams can overcome, not having a good culture and then go out there and win? Very few. Very few. And that takes a special group of guys in any sport, if you have a bad culture, to go out there and win games.
Yeah, it actually should be the other way. To your point, you can have a good culture and not win, but I don't think you can have a bad culture necessarily and win consistently. As in, you could say St. Louis has a culture, but they're not going to win every single year. You could say San Diego State men's basketball has a culture. They're not always going to play in a national championship game. Uh-huh. But when you have a bad culture, are you able to maintain consistent winning? I think if you have a good culture, you don't have to always be good, but you can always fall back on culture. But when you have a bad season and a bad culture, this is what happens.
Exactly what happens. When Manny Machado has bad years, he is not the type of leader that everyone thought he was, that can elevate the team around him to make sure that his bad performance and his clubhouse demeanor, or whatever you want to say, is something that's not going to bring the team down, because it absolutely does. It just does. And a part of this, article that I read, and you might think it's nothing, but I think it is something. When talking about the team meetings that that this team has had over the course of this year, where it seemed like they have had 9 or 10, and that's what Kevin said, about
8 or 9.
8 or 9, team meetings this year. And one of the predominant voices in those team meetings, no surprise, is Manny Machado.
Mm-hmm.
And it coming out of this article, I'll just read this part. And this to me speaks to the fact of, like, if you were a leader and if you cared about culture, which absolutely matters, these things would not happen. And clearly Manny doesn't think that a culture matters, and this is when you get problems. So Kevin wrote, Machado, according to multiple players, was by no means he's talking about, they need to be on time for meetings and be on time for the bus and do this type of work and basically the little things, right? Like, if you don't do the little things, you're not going to accomplish the ultimate goals, I feel like. Like, it's all about the little details. He said Machado, according to multiple players, was by no means the only one who often did not put what was said into practice. The failure to turn words into winning play was endemic, as the result to show. what some did maintain was that because Machado is such a significant voice, him not following through on the little things set a tone that essentially could not be overcome. To ask a Padres player why no one could confront Machado on these matters is to be looked at as if you have 6 heads.
Yeah, I love that line.
We talked about this, John. Nobody in that clubhouse can hold Manny Machado accountable. Nobody.
Yeah,
and
including the manager.
Including the manager.
Yeah.
That right there is a huge issue.
I'll take it further. So Trent Grisham the other day, you freak out, right? Rightfully so. A lot of people do. He bunts with the bases loaded, nobody out. Bad decision.
Yeah.
Right? We can all agree.
Yeah.
And you say hold him accountable. And I don't disagree. You say hold him accountable. DFA him. Sit him. Bench him. How can you do that when you got $350 million powerful players not running balls out and being late to a bus? So you're telling me Trent Grisham's maybe a poor decision on field, a mistake of a decision. Okay, that's in a baseball game.
Yeah.
So we all can make mistakes, all right, doing our job. I think it's way more egregious if Manny Machado is late to a bus.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone should be late to a bus. I don't think anyone should be late to a team meeting. I don't think anyone should be missing early work when I'm trying to split a series with the Dodgers at home and my season's on the line. But here's the problem. When Manny gets away with it, to the overall point, everyone will.
Yeah.
And if Manny's able to get away with it, you can't come down on anyone else for not doing their part, because literally the captain of the ship isn't living up to his job either.
Yeah, I just look at this whole thing, and it's so concerning because I don't know if Manny gets it. I don't.
Right.
Like, I don't know if Manny –
Well, I think he's hard-headed.
I do think he is hard-headed, but I think that's also plays into – I don't know if he understands truly what he is saying. Like, I don't think he knows that when he says in a team sport and in professional sports, culture, essentially doesn't matter. Like, it's all about just, hey, perform on the field, you win baseball games, that's a culture. Like, it's so much deeper than that.
So much deeper.
And yes, I know I'm a Warriors homer because I'm a Warriors fan. Yes, I grew up in the Bay Area, shocker. But I the first thing that I did today after hearing this, because I wanted to get some context on why culture should matter, right? And you can hate the Warriors all you want, it's fine. But you can't deny that the Warriors culture with Steph Curry and Steve Kerr is pretty good. And to hear Steve Kerr today just talk about how important culture is and how important it is for your leader of the team, which is the Steph Curry, to exemplify everything that they want that culture to be, it trickles down to the last player on the bench, the last player on the team, to know that that is who I should be following. And if Manny Machado is a guy that's going to say these things and not follow through, then, like you said, you're right, John, you're going to have the entire team looking at Manny saying, well, dude, he's not doing it, I'm not going to have to do it.
You just made a great point for a first time. I'm kidding. When the best player on the best team does the little things, you've got a better chance to be even a better team. This isn't even about Steph Curry being great. He could be a great leader and be a not great player. He could still be a great leader. It's even better when he's a great player. I'll bring it home even more as you go to the Bay Area with that. Matt Bradley, after the national championship game, in tears on the podium saying, I didn't even know if I wanted to play basketball before I came to San Diego State. It was the pandemic. I was in the portal. I thought about getting a job. They took me in, and it's the man I am today is because of the San Diego State culture, not because we made the run. Brian Dutcher, everything that he possesses as a leader is real. And you can watch it. I actually watched it today walking over here about 20 minutes ago. I could have shared the sound with Brent in the rundown, but you've probably heard it. Culture is tangible and real. We can pretend like it's just some word. It doesn't matter until it actually does. It absolutely matters. Maybe it's not the end-all, be-all every single night, every single game. To your point, I'm sure there's teams without perfect cultures that have won at a high level. But to consistently win and to try to do it without a culture is crazy and asinine. Why would you spend $300 million per year on a team that is just kind of like bending in the wind? Right? If things are good, they're good. If things are bad, they're bad. What do you rely on? What's your DNA? How many times have we said, what's the Padres' DNA? What's their calling card? Who are they?
It's not a good one. It's not a good DNA. It isn't. And that's a question that is, when you ask it and you don't have an answer to it, that's not good.
Right.
Something's wrong there. I did find so many things in this article that I found interesting that it's just like, yep. Like, I don't know if you were completely shocked by it. I wasn't.
No.
I was.
It confirmed everything we've said for 5 months.
Yeah, I think like it just was like, okay, see, like this is it.
Right.
I don't know what else to tell you guys. I mean, you guys are, if you're, these are actual quotes, and
Kevin didn't make them up.
Kevin didn't make these things up, and so this to me kind of is what I've been trying to say about Manny Machado, is that according to multiple veterans who have been with the Padres for varying lengths of time, and most who have also played for other teams, is largely born of the team's best player being on their own programs to some extent.
Right.
And in particular, it is the product of there being an outsized presence who commands the room, a man who has shown the ability to carry a team, but has not exhibited the ability nor inclination to lift it. That's Manny Machado. When he's good, he can carry a team,
no doubt,
on the field, but when he's bad, he is not the type of guy to lift the team from within without performing on the field. He is not a guy, like you said, to hold, like when Trent Grisham lays down a bunt.
Yeah, he's not worried about it.
You need a team leader and the captain of your team to be like, bro, what are you doing?
I mean, can I just say this, and we'll converse more on the other side. And by the way, we want to hear from you. 70470 started with team. I mean, what emotions do you have when you read this article? Does this make you angry?
No, I'm disappointed.
Upset? Yeah. Well, like, what are the emotions you have?
They're stuck with them.
You know what? I'm gonna bring this thing full circle, and I'm gonna do it on the other side. You're gonna be shocked where I take it. Do not go anywhere. Jon and Jim with you here on a Friday afternoon. Kevin Acee will join us at 5:05 p.m. We are at Fair Play in North Park until 6, getting you ready for a very busy sports weekend. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us on Jon and Jim. All right, guys, it is Schaefer. It is the weekend. Get ready for your sports weekend, for all your tailgating needs, for your football needs. Do it over at Windmill Farms. Great spot. College Area's natural grocer. They've got you covered for all your game day needs this weekend with their outstanding farm fresh produce and meats. It's organic, by the way. They've got an amazing craft beer selection. They really do. They've got a full deli with award-winning sandwiches you can pick up over the course of the weekend, during the week as well, during your lunch hour. They're centrally located off Del Cerro Boulevard, across the freeway from Montezuma Mesa. Windmill Farms is your family-owned market serving the San Diego area for 20 years. So get ready for football this weekend and do it over at Windmill Farms. You can visit windmillfarmsmarket.com. There you're going to see their weekly specials. Again, windmillfarmsmarket.com. You'll see their weekly specials. But again, swing by, centrally located off Del Cerro Boulevard. Whatever you need this weekend, they have it for you. Shop local. Shop at Windmill Farms.
All right, this update is brought to you by Staples Stores. Padres, yeah, they're still playing baseball. They started another series this weekend with the Oakland A's. 6:40 first pitch tonight. Seth Lugo on the mound for the Padres. Padres, they did make a couple moves today like it matters. Matt Carpenter went on the IL, and they recalled G-Man Choi, if anybody remembers him. And the Aztecs, they take on Oregon State tomorrow in Corvallis, 12:30 kickoff. 10:30 a.m. is when our pregame coverage starts with me, John, and J.R. Tolver right here on San Diego Sports 760. And this update has been brought to you by Staples.
All right, big Friday afternoon lined up for you here from Fair Play. Please join us. We're here until 6 o'clock. Then they've got every sport you could imagine this evening, including the Padres and the A's, college football this weekend as well. So get to Fair Play in North Park. Really good show for you today. Kevin Acee will join us at 5:05. He probably has been busy today, including in the Padres clubhouse right now. He will also be with Bob Melvin later this afternoon. Kyle Glazer from Baseball America will join us at 4:45. Voice of the Rams, JB Long at 5:30. What do you got? Paul Garrison at 4:10.
I was like, can I just get this out of the way about, I've seen a lot of this on social media today that Kevin should be banned from the clubhouse for this hit piece or whatever. And then I see Yonder Alonso attacking Kevin Acee. And I'm thinking to myself, you guys have no freaking clue what you are talking about. If you don't like a reporter, you don't have to like Kevin. But when Kevin puts out an article with actual quotes and he is sourcing multiple players. Now, again, it's, say the word, John, anonymity.
Mm-hmm.
These players aren't going on the record. I mean,
for a reason.
For a reason.
They share the baseball field in the clubhouse with them.
If all of a sudden Xander Bogaerts on the record and he says, "Oh, Manny Machado sucks. I hate him."
It's kind of like they're being whistleblowers, to be honest.
A little bit.
Whistleblowers are allowed to have
hey,
anonymity as well.
I can't get through to him, but if you put this out there,
maybe it'll help.
It might help.
Right.
So anybody out there dogging Kevin today and saying that he doesn't know what he's talking about and this is just a complete hit piece on Manny Machado, you have no idea what you are saying. You are completely foolish. And this article is not a hit piece. Okay. Well, this is an article with quotes in it from Manny Machado himself, who sat down with Kevin. And I'll be interested to see if Manny, heard what Kevin was doing here. We talked to him at 5 in actual quotes from Manny Machado. So give me a freaking break.
Well, a couple of things. It doesn't really matter what anyone thinks about anything Kevin writes. He's a member of the Baseball Writers Association of America. He will have a right to cover the team. They will not be able to take away his credentials no matter what he is writing, essentially. And I'm not going to – I think you said it spot on. Kevin can defend his own work. And he'll join us coming up at 5 p.m. That's for Kevin to do. I would say this is where my mind went today. The first place I went. When we talk about accountability and culture, do you remember in 2021 when there was all the hoopla over Tatis's 3-0 Grand Slam, right, in Texas?
Yep.
Who was the first to go up to Tatis after he hit the Grand Slam?
Eric Hosmer.
And listen, I'm only saying it to some extent facetiously, but the point is this, that if there is no one to hold you accountable, there is no one to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
So if at some point in this, period of time with Fernando Tatis Jr. or the Padres over the last handful of years, you had players that were better suited for those roles. Maybe it was Hosmer, maybe it was Profar, maybe in the future. Nobody does anything about it. It's like if a tree falls in the forest, and is anyone going to hear it make a sound? At least in 2021, I remember immediately these players were going up to Fernando Tatis Jr. That was 2020. In 2021, there was a level of accountability, I think, in the clubhouse, potentially, because you had the Tatis Machado blow-up. Somebody was trying to hold someone accountable. It's like now in 2023, it's a rudderless ship, is what it seems like. They don't have that, enforcer guy. They don't have that leader in the clubhouse that's going to point the team in the right direction when things go bad. And that's evidenced by what Kevin wrote today.
I think, Manny doesn't know how to lead. If you look at every single team he's been on with the Baltimore Orioles and the Dodgers and now the Padres, I would say that being on the Baltimore Orioles, Adam Jones, J.J. Hardy, like Buck Showalter as your man. Like, I think Manny had it where he didn't have to be that guy, like that leader of the team. He had other players there that were much better suited for that role. Now, was Manny Machado potentially the best player on those teams? You could argue that absolutely. But I would say that this iteration of Manny Machado on the Padres is really his first time when he signed here 5 years ago, his first time ever being that like guy. And you could say that Hosmer was also there with him.
Yeah.
But it got so toxic with Hosmer because he just like
he didn't perform.
And the fan base turned on him. And when he signed a $144 million contract and you don't perform and it turns into one of the worst contracts, if not the worst contract in franchise history, it's really hard to like have that guy stick. When you have Adam Jones and J.J. Hardy, and then you go to the Dodgers and you have Clayton Kershaw and Justin Turner and, I mean, whoever else is on those Dodger teams, right? Like, you have bona fide, true leaders of teams that are not going to let guys slip up. They're not going to have this lack of accountability when they say something like they better do it and they're going to do it. And you get here with Manny and it's like 2019 was a disaster. Was that team expected to win? I could argue no, but I could also argue yes with how they started the year, bringing up Fernando Tatis Jr. and with what Peter Seidler said to Darren, like, hey, if we miss out on a couple games, we didn't have Tatis from the beginning of the year, I would never forgive myself. So they were trying to win in 2019. It just was a disaster. 2020, short year, but I guarantee you if that's a longer season with the pitching woes they had, I don't know if they make the postseason. Then 2021 happened. And then last year, like, yeah, but there were problems with that team, as mentioned in Kevin's article. Like, it wasn't all just like roses and butterflies last year. Like, there were some issues with that team. And then you get to this year where everything implodes.
Can I say this, though? And you made this point where, like, yeah, I think Manny's a big problem, but I don't think he's the only problem even in the clubhouse.
No.
Everything you just said about Manny's success in L.A. and in Baltimore, to be honest, looking back on Juan Soto's time in Washington, I could easily say. I could say it's Steven Strasburg and it's Max Scherzer and it's Trey Turner, and Juan Soto's not expected. And he performs in a very short period of time, which was basically in the second half of the year and the postseason for the Nationals. But when the dynamic shifts and all of a sudden he's the leader, he's the cleanup batter, he's not. But you get my point. He is, you're building around Juan Soto. They weren't building around Juan Soto in 2019. With the Nationals, the dynamic shifts. And all of a sudden, you're accountable for the success or failure of the team. I think at the end of the day, beyond Machado, and we've said this a lot, there's way too many type A personalities on this team for when things don't work out. Last year, you could say, well, hold on, they've added Soto and Tatis. Isn't that a good thing? Well, I don't know. With Soto and Tatis and Bogarts and Machado and the veteran pitchers that they have, maybe it's like too much. It's like a master of none situation. It's like they got too many guys and there's no one that anyone can turn to lead them, lead them out of their own way. That's what it seems like right now to me. It's like nobody wants to take the bull by the horns, another cliche, and lead this team.
Nobody does,
including Machado.
I can't get over that culture line, man. That is such a damning indictment on Manny Machado.
It is.
If you don't think culture matters, and if you are so hung up, like, what is this, college baseball?
Right.
Like, what are we doing here? Is this high school? Man, you have a problem. Man, you have such a bigger problem here than anybody would have realized.
Right.
And when you go to, like, the lengths of people not standing up for one another, like it was also referenced in this article about how in Seattle, when I think Steven Wilson, Teoscar Hernandez was at the plate. Steven Wilson hit Teoscar Hernandez, and everybody for the Mariners jumped up out of the dugout. And everybody went over the front rail. You had Julio Rodriguez be like, no, I ain't standing for that crap. Manny gets hit by some dude on Pittsburgh. No one's moving in the dugout.
No one cares.
No one cares. That's the culture part that Manny thinks doesn't matter. Well, guess what? It absolutely does, and you can see why. When you don't give a crap about culture, how can it affect your team?
Yeah, exactly. So if you don't care about culture, that's like you're missing the whole point. It's like I'm trying to think of like another analogy there. It's like saying when you say the culture doesn't matter, what you're saying is you really don't have a good feel for what matters. I mean, that's essentially what you're saying. When you say culture doesn't matter, You are saying you have a bad culture.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right, on the other side, what changes come as a result of this S show? I mean, what change is coming, and
I
what
really
is
want to
change?
discuss.
What change is actually going to make a change on field for the Padres in 2024? What changes are coming? Kevin Acee will join us at 5:05 from Oakland. He wrote this article in the UT here today. If you have not read it, you need to. As the Padres season spirals, questions emerge about culture, cohesion, and chemistry. Kevin Acee at 5:05. What changes are coming as a result of this disaster? Stay with us on Jon and Jim. All right, what changes are coming now that we've read what has been occurring? We kind of already knew what was going on. We now have the proof. What changes are coming as a result of this 2023 disaster on field for the Padres? That's next. Kevin Acee, Padres Insider, 5:05 p.m. He wrote this lengthy piece on the Padres' spiraling season, the questions that are emerging right now about the Padres culture, their cohesion and chemistry. He'll join us at 5:05. Also today, between now and 6 p.m., we'll give away a 4-pack of tickets to SeaWorld's Howl O Scream. More information available at SeaWorldSanDiego.com. All right, Jim has a number of things highlighted from this article. It was a lengthy article. I didn't do a word count, but a couple thousand words.
Yeah.
So there's a number of areas we've wanted to hit on. Jim has another area he'd like to discuss with our listeners and viewers right now.
Oh, wait, first, can I just say, like, people are really upset today. I really upset.
Well, I think they should be.
And I'm getting some vitriol responses on
They're
Twitter.
mad at you.
I know.
Right.
Like, it's my fault this team sucks.
No, there's no question about it. People are honestly.
Jim's one of the
get
unnamed
anger.
sources.
No, I get the anger because this thing is so sideways. Everyone wants a reason. I'm going back to my true crime.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to know why a crime occurs. This has been a true crime.
Yeah.
This team is 10 games under 500, heading for one of the worst records in the National League. Why? And this helps answer the why question.
And just to point, like, Yonder Alonso, who
Yes.
is Manny's brother-in-law,
Right.
tweeted out Kevin Acee equals Trent Krim.
So fill that in for me. That's from
I don't know who that is.
Brian. Who is that?
Oh,
the
J-Riff
Independent?
had explained to me. That's some reporter from that soccer show, Ted Lasso.
Okay. Yes. That's what I thought, actually. Okay.
SMH.
J-Riff explained to me that he's like some sort of like jerk reporter or something on Ted Lasso.
Okay. All right.
So that was
good to know.
what he's going for.
Yonder says, SMH, zero clue to be honest, sad. I quote tweeted that and said, when actual quotes from players get printed and they are damning to the player, reporter's fault.
Okay.
These are some comments I got. You don't believe the guy that's around him all the time? Why we just give him the middle finger to Manny? Okay.
Well, because this is what Manny said.
Someone else said, Daniel says, you're just salty because you and Kevin Acee are on the same page.
Or one and the same. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, I love this one by Rob. It says, how are you a self-claimed Padres fan when everything you tweet is negative? I'm actually not. It's my job to cover the Padres. You got bigger problems to worry about on the back of your head, you
curse word.
Yeah.
Right. Again, you shouldn't, when you start interacting with people that don't have a headshot and have one follower, then you're asking for trouble.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Okay. So back to this article. I think this part right here is something I don't know how you fix.
Okay. Let me hear it.
Like, I just don't know how you fix it.
Let me hear it.
This is an actual quote from Manny.
Mm-hmm.
Over the course of the sit-down in the visitors' dugout at Dodger Stadium, there was never a point where Machado appeared more reflective than when considering the togetherness topic.
Right.
After one particularly long pause, he said, quote, I think we just didn't want it. I think overall as a group, we didn't want it as bad as Seattle did or as bad as some other teams did, talking about, that getting hit, players getting hit, and the players in the dugout, reacting. I will say that. I think that's everyone's fault. I think it's everybody's fault. We didn't want it as a team. It falls down to the team. It's not necessarily one player. It's not an individual sport. So I think ultimately it comes down to all of us. We should have wanted it more. Man.
Right.
When you say things like, well, we didn't want it, how could you, going into this year, coming off of an NLCS run, reloading with Xander Bogaerts and Fernando Tatis Jr. and having Juan Soto for a full year, and you just got your $350 million contract that the owner gave you, how could you go into a season and at any point in the season say, yeah, we just didn't want it? Like, that, to me, is something that is so bad to say about a team that's expected and expectations are to win a World Series. You didn't want it? Like, F you, dude. If I'm a fan, F you.
Well, that's why I said, earlier in the hour that Manny proved Soto's quitting quote earlier, because when we read that quote, I said that was my take. I mean, he confirmed in this article what Juan Soto had confirmed in the second half of the season as well, which is this team is full of quitters. And there's a reason they're 6-22 in one-run games. There's a reason, because they just don't want it as much as other teams. It's not just bad luck. It's not that it is guaranteed to flip in 2024. When they are trailing, they fold like a cheap tent. When they are leading, they have been front runners all year long. They cannot deal with adversity.
Mm-hmm.
That quote fully illustrates it. If you remember when they were in Seattle, it was teams heading the opposite direction. Seattle had won 8 in a row.
Yeah.
When they went to Seattle, the Padres were really sideways at that point. They probably could have still salvaged their season maybe if they turned it around, but they just didn't want to. And then to further that point, it's like you had Juan Soto for 2.5 years. That's it. Time is fleeting.
How could you not
and
want
to
it?
punt on 2023 with the idea that 2024 is going to be better. Who knows what 2024 is going to look like?
I don't know.
I think that the whole we didn't want it just feels like a cop out to where it's just like, oh, we totally could have won that, but we just didn't want to. So that's why we lost. And
or even if he's sorry, Brian.
Just one more thing real quick. My big thing out of the article was I always just kind of figured Manny was one of those, I'm not going to lead through the media. I'm going to kind of just be a lead by an example type of a dude. And then you read in the article about how, we have all these team meetings and I'm going to tell you that we got to show up and be on time and we got to go to BP. And then, the very next day, who doesn't show up for BP and who doesn't show up for any of the things that he pretty much said that, you're supposed to do. And he's not leading by example. He's pretty much telling everybody what they should do. And then he's going and doing his own thing and not backing up his own words.
And I don't know for sure. And I agree with you, Brent. I don't know for sure if like Manny says, hey, tomorrow we got a team meeting at 1:00, everyone be here. And then I don't know if that like very next day Manny showed up at like 1:30, but I do think that it's been said, like whatever Manny has said in this clubhouse for these team meetings or whatever other players who have spoken at these team meetings said that they need to do, it feels like everything that's being said is not being followed through on.
Which is a terrible leader. If you work for someone that tells you to do something and this is the way we need to act and they don't follow up on that, that's a terrible leader. And by the way, to your point, we don't know if he showed up at 1:30. What we do know is on the final game of a 4-game series against the Dodgers at Petco Park, Padres did not take early infield work and the Dodgers did. Maybe there's a reason why. I don't know the full dynamic. Maybe they were having a team meeting. Maybe they were doing something deemed more important. But if Matt Williams is out there hitting to reserves, then I wouldn't think that there's something more important than that. If the Dodgers treat it as important when they're coming off their 100th consecutive really good season, then why aren't you treating it as if it's important? It's the little things that lead to the big things.
Yep, little things that lead to the big things. If you don't start there and make sure that you always are doing those little things, you have created a bad culture. And if Manny Machado thinks the culture doesn't matter, well, guess what? It does. You created something that's not good. You've created something that, hey, when you have a good year and you're second MVP voting, then you could have a good season.
Yeah.
But when you don't, and then you slack off, and for whatever reason, you don't follow through on things that you say, and then you believe that culture truly doesn't matter. It's all about, hey, as long as we perform, it doesn't matter. Like, give me a break, dude. We've heard multiple times from multiple people in this clubhouse this year, specifically Joe Musgrove, like, hey, we need to have team outings and go. This was early on in the year, team outings and do this. We need to be more together. Like, hey, we need to talk to each other in the dugout between pitchers to like talk about this. None of that's happened. And it's like, it's such an indictment on everything from the top bottom of this organization, from Peter all the way down to the last player on the bench, that everybody is to blame. But when your leaders are at the forefront saying that culture doesn't matter, like, ooh, man, you got some real issues.
I wonder if it's a Padres problem or if it's a Manny problem. Now, unfortunately, it can't be fixed.
I think it's both.
I also think, and Paul Garrison will join us from East Village Times at 4:10. By the way, we'll get into San Diego State. You can hear here tomorrow on San Diego Sports 760. Kevin Acee is going to join us. At 4:10. Stay with us on Jon and Jim.
All right, this update is brought to you by Staples Stores. Padres, they start a 3-game series tonight with the Oakland A's. 6:40 first pitch. Seth Lugo on the mound for the Padres tonight. Padres have made some moves, John. They put Matt Carpenter on the IL. Then they reinstated G-Man Choi. Remember that name? Yeah, he was traded here. He is now back with the active roster. And San Diego State takes on Oregon State this Saturday. Well, that's tomorrow. 12:30 kickoff. 10:30 a.m. is when our pregame coverage starts right here on San Diego Sports 760. And this update has been brought to you by Staples.
All right, San Diego and Southern California, what's going on? It is hour 2 of Jon and Jim. Kevin Acee, our Padres insider, who wrote this piece we've discussed for the last hour about the Padres culture, and Manny Machado potentially at the center of it. He will join us coming up at 5:05. Paul Garrison will get us ready for San Diego State, Oregon State tomorrow at 12:30. He'll join us in a handful of minutes. We have those Howl O Scream tickets to give away as well. Will Myers has weighed in.
He never weighs in on anything.
About
he hasn't
time.
tweeted. He's never tweeted.
This is what I was waiting for today after the Kevin piece. What does Will Myers think?
Well, Will Myers, who's not playing, right?
I don't think he is.
So he's had time to weigh in on Twitter. This is Will Myers replying to the Union Tribune's tweet, not Kevin's tweet, at SDUT. This tweet came out 8 hours ago at 7 in the morning. Will Myers replying, I didn't play for the Padres in 2023, but it's unfair to headline one player for the struggles of an organization in a particular year. In my opinion, this is not an accurate representation of who I knew for 4 years.
What I say to that is,
Will Myers.
Will, love you, guy. I don't think he read the article.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I view that. I don't
think he read the article?
I don't think he read the UT article.
You don't think that in replying to the UT article, he even read it?
Because
I think he read the highlights of it.
I think you read the highlights. Clearly stated in that piece by Kevin, multiple times. Does Kevin think, and is he writing this to make it all about Manny Machado, and the reasons why this team has failed this year in the historic fashion is because of Manny Machado? No.
True. And I'm with you there, but hear me out. Here are the headlines. The Manny.
I get it, man.
Then the next headline is, let's see, culture questions, and the first sentence is about Machado.
Well,
the only player that's quoted in here is Manny Machado.
He sat down with Manny Machado for 30 minutes at Dodger Stadium.
Should have wanted it more. Headline is Machado.
He is asking Manny Machado about these things. I get it. The entire piece is about Manny.
It really
Read
is.
Read the top. It says...
No, but I get it. But I could be like, listen, I love Jim, but I think Jim should be fired. Do you really love Jim?
But also, I could say that, hey, I talked to John Schaefer about
Jon and Jim.
About Jon and Jim.
And I'm like, the culture's trash.
About Jon and Jim, but by no means is it only John's fault.
Right. But then if you only talk to me...
But what if he... But Kevin...
But I know, but I'm just saying, I'm saying the idea that this is... I'm with you, but the idea that this isn't an article about Manny Machado, I think is it is about Manny Machado. We can say...
No, it is.
And I'm not saying he's blaming Manny Machado fully. He's quoting Manny Machado, but he's putting the spotlight on Manny Machado.
John.
He's putting the spotlight on Manny Machado.
And what do you say all the time? I saw
heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Someone on social media said that everybody should drink today. Anytime they hear heavy is the head that wears the crown,
right.
because we're going to be saying that a lot today. And we've so far have. If you've been playing that game, you are drunk out of your mind.
I agree.
Nobody cares about what Luis Campusano has to say.
But what about Juan Soto?
Even Juan Soto, as a good of a player he is, this is Manny's team.
I agree.
I want to hear from Manny Machado. I want an in-depth dive from Manny Machado about what is going on. And then when Kevin, who talked to, and he's in that clubhouse every day, talks to many players about these types of things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then goes to Manny. Like, that's going to be one of my first questions to Kevin is like, hey, when you sat down with Manny Machado, was there an understanding of why you're asking him these questions? Like, why are you asking about the culture? Why are you asking about the want? Why are you asking about all of these things at this time of the season? Because Kevin has been talking to players in that clubhouse about this very thing. And when you have the leader of your team not performing, and he just got a huge contract, and in 3 of the 5 years that he's been here and been the quote unquote leader of this team, you have come up with disastrous seasons, not just like, oh, we just missed the postseason. Like, there's articles written after every single one of these years that Manny has not done well in about there's a problem with this culture and team. Yes, it's not all about Manny. Manny's a big part of it.
And I agree with that. But, I mean, do you think Will Myers is off when he says it's unfair to headline one player for the struggles? I mean, this is, if nothing else, I agree with you. I don't think he's set out as a hit piece on Machado, but isn't this an article centered around Manny Machado's failure to the organization?
I mean, yeah. Well, why should you have a problem with it? Why should anybody have a problem with this?
Well, I'm just saying that if you're going to, I don't have a problem with it, but if you're going to have an article that's centered so much about Manny Machado, is it reasonable and fair to question Juan Soto's contributions or lack thereof, or Fernando Tatis Jr.'s contributions or lack thereof, or Xander Bogaerts' role in this?
No,
were the players asked?
No, I think that those players should all be held accountable.
But do you feel as if from reading this article, all of the players are? I'm asking the questions.
I just look at it like, hey, for any team, all right, in any sport, quarterbacks of the team, the point guard of the team, right, the leader of the team, like, dude, when you have seasons like this, when expectations are so high and no one understands and knows why these things are happening, who is the first person you need to go to? Manny. Like, why is these things happening? Do you believe that there's a culture problem? Why should I believe there's a culture problem? Who cares about culture? Bingo. That's the problem.
Here's my question. And here's my question for Kevin. I'll ask it. Was the premise for the piece Manny Machado's role in the year going sideways, or was the premise for the piece why has the year gone sideways? There's a clear distinction there. Was the point of the piece that...
We'll ask him.
Right. Was the point of the piece, hey, what role has Manny Machado played in this? Or was the point of the piece, why has this gone sideways and everyone said Manny Machado? There's a big, big difference. All right, we have Paul Garrison? All right, Paul Garrison, East Village Times. We're going to get back to it. Thank you, Brent. All right, tomorrow, right here, San Diego Sports 760, San Diego State, Oregon State at 12:30. Our pregame coverage is going to begin at 10:30. We'll get back to this, by the way, with Kevin Acee, who will join us coming up at 5 p.m. Paul, off the UCLA game, where's your area? What does San Diego State need to do better than they did a week ago to put themselves in a better position against Oregon State?
Two things. They have to be able to run the football and then build their offense around what they've been good at for, the last 13 years. And then defensively, they have to limit the big plays. Time and time again with UCLA, I mean, I think if there's probably the most surprising part of that, it was that the Bruins were able to get, drives that took 1 play, 3 plays, when San Diego State had not given up a lot of short drives prior to that. And so if they're able to at least make Oregon State work, run the football, which would limit the possessions, I think, they have a puncher's chance of being able to stick around and turn over there, pull off the upset.
Paul, for the first 3 games of the season, are you, I don't want to say surprised, but were you expecting maybe more out of this offense, or is this something that everybody should have had reasonable expectations for, with losing so many weapons on and for wide receiver for this offense, having a new offensive coordinator? They did not look good, albeit for a couple drives against Ohio. They did not look good in the passing game against Idaho State. They ran the ball well, but they should have beat that team by 30. And then against UCLA this past Saturday, a lot of mistakes with this offense. Are you surprised by how they have looked and the lack of, success they've had the first 3 games?
I don't know if surprise is the right word, but I think when everybody when we were having conversations about what this offense was, we often used the word hope, right? And the hope was that the best of what they saw around Jalen Maiden last year would carry over and he would be able to be better. And I think that his play has been a little bit of what you would expect, but not what you would hope. And I think against UCLA, I thought he was competitive. I thought there were times where he, was inaccurate with the football. Obviously, if 2 catches are made that weren't made, his numbers would look a lot better. He would have had 3 touchdown passes and 2 interceptions, and maybe the shape of the game looks different. But I think the biggest surprise is how poorly they ran the football against UCLA. And if you are going to create a recipe for San Diego State and their success, it doesn't look like throwing the ball upwards of 40 times and running it with their running backs 20 times. They're going to have to find that balance and put Maiden in the best opportunity to be able to be successful, which I think is, again, playing off of the play action. It's being able to get out of the pocket. It's being able to make things happen that way.
Paul Garrison from the East Village Times is with us right now. San Diego State, Oregon State from Corvallis tomorrow at 12:30 with pregame coverage beginning at 10:30. When you think about the what's to come here for the Aztecs as opposed to what they faced last week against UCLA, would you refer to this as even a bigger challenge than the Bruins last week?
Well, I mean, absolutely on paper. I mean, I think the one caveat to that is I'm not sure that Oregon State this year has yet to have a game where it's really indicative of who they are. They got to play San Jose State, but San Jose State had played one game, and Oregon State was able to kind of prepare for them a lot better than San Jose State was able to prepare for Oregon State. The Beavers played an FCS school last week. And so there is the chance that maybe they're not quite as dynamic as they look. But in those first 2 weeks, they have looked like the Oregon State's, number 16, number 17 ranking is too low. They've looked absolutely fantastic. They've been able to run the football. They've been able to pass the football. They've been able to play good defense. And so on paper, absolutely, it looks like a stern test. Again, if San Diego State can limit those big plays, I think, they could keep the game close and then, try to be able to pull it out in the fourth quarter. But Oregon State has the potential to be able to make those big plays in the exact same way. And I think I would agree with your assessment that they look to be a harder test than what the Bruins brought to San Diego last week.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at this game as I just want to see them just play better. I want them to just make sure they don't have the mistakes that they did on offense like they did against UCLA. Do I think they're going to win the game? No. And I'm looking ahead now to the next iteration of this schedule. And we've talked about this, like these 4 games, right? UCLA, Oregon State, Boise State, Air Force. At worst, 2-2. If you go 1-3 in this situation, like that's a tough pill to swallow after starting your year 2-0. How important is it to make sure that this weekend it doesn't turn into like a complete blowout to where now you go into next weekend with, still question marks and not this momentum that you hope you have going into conference play versus Boise State and Air Force?
I think that's a great question. And I agree with the sentiment behind it. They have to make sure that, their confidence can remain high. The up and down nature and the inconsistency that San Diego State has played with to this point is not surprising, going back to your first question, because they have so many new pieces. But if they're able to see some of those start to come together and they're competitive against one of the best teams in the country, I think they actually could build momentum towards the conference season. It was surprising, maybe, I don't know if that's quite the right word, but that they played so many new players and started new players and gave guys who hadn't been playing in the first 2 games defensively. Deshaun McEwen got to start and played a lot against UCLA, and they put him in, high leverage situations. And so they're still trying to figure out exactly their best way of playing. And they're doing that with an eye on those games that you talked about with Boise State and Air Force. And those are the most important games. And so I think you're 100% right that, for them to be able to play well, to grow from what they did against UCLA as they're pointing to the conference schedule, I think is huge. And, they have a short week playing on Friday against Boise State, a week from today.
Paul, final one for me, just the league in general, talking about Boise and Air Force. I mean, what do you make of the league in general so far in the non-conference, Mountain West?
I think a lot of those teams are running. They really look like San Diego State. You get a team like Fresno State who goes on the road. I believe it's Purdue that they beat on the road. You're like, okay, well then they're a really, really good team. And then they go to overtime with an FCS school the following week at home. Boise State, they were picked to win the conference. They lost at home to a Group of 5 team. And, Air Force did not look like they were, the dominant rushing attack that they had against an FCS school, in the same vein that San Diego State didn't look great against Idaho State. And so I think the conference is there for the Aztecs to be able to compete. And it's going to be all of these questions that we've been asking. Will they be able to rise to the forefront and do the things they're capable of, reach that potential? And whichever team can figure out how to do that, I think is going to put itself in a good position to win a conference championship.
Paul, is Jalen Maiden a good clubhouse leader? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Thanks, Paul, man. Thanks.
Paul, appreciate it, man. We're looking forward to it tomorrow. We always appreciate you swinging by on Fridays. And again, for those that are looking for more San Diego State coverage, football, men's basketball, and otherwise, Paul Garrison, East Village Times, you should look no further. Thanks, Paul.
Appreciate you guys.
All right, Paul Garrison, East Village Times. I wanted to get to this text, by the way, because it's always fun. There's
so
a million texts that have rolled in.
Yeah.
619, who I think is a loyal listener because I recognize the number, says, I get it now why you guys keep bashing Manny. You guys are not from here. John is a Cornhusker, which I'm not, but whatever. Jim is from the Bay Area, which is accurate. Brent is a Badger, which is accurate. Go Manny, give them hell. Okay. So that's from the 619. Now, so does that mean that if you're from here, your expectations should just be like, we don't care. It doesn't matter. It's our team. They could go winless every year. We don't care. We're going to back the organization. We're going to back all players. If that's the case, I guess I'm glad that I have the ability to have a level of unbiasedness when it comes to this. Because look, I'm not bashing Manny because for any other reason other than what Kevin wrote here today. It's not because of where I'm from. That's not the reason why Manny's being bashed.
Look, if you want Homer Radio, just click over to their station. Click over to their station. It's fine. We are giving our opinions on what we see, what we read, what we hear. And frankly, if you want to listen to Homer takes and Homer Radio and whatever the case may be, this is not the show for you.
Correct.
We are going to tell you when they do good, and we're going to tell you when they do bad. And that's how we go. Like, when this team sucks, we'll tell you. When they're really good, we'll tell you. If you listen back to our shows from last year at this time, what were we talking about predominantly? Postseason. Like, was I saying that Manny Machado is not a good leader last year? No. But was I also at times when Manny Machado was struggling, calling him out? Yes, I was. Like, people think that just because Manny had a good year last year, that nobody criticized Manny. And it's shameful if you criticize a player for not doing well. Well, I did do that, and I got killed for it. So I don't care about, like, making friends or feelings or whatever the case may be. I'm going to tell you how it is. And when the team's not doing well, I'll freaking tell you. And when Manny Machado is quoted saying that culture doesn't matter to him, I'll tell you how stupid that is and how damning that is to a freaking franchise.
And by the way, 619, I have a feeling that not everyone complaining today is not a San Diegan, and everyone that's content today is a San Diegan. I don't think the line of delineation is your birthplace in this conversation. If it is, that's utterly stupid.
The dumbest argument
If you have no opinion because of where you're from, then, I mean, what are you, a puppet?
Dude,
right?
I've lived in San Diego for 13 plus years. I met my fiance here. We're getting married in San Diego.
None of it even matters.
It doesn't matter. But I'm telling you that, like, the fact that I didn't grow up here and you didn't grow up here and Brent didn't grow up here and whoever else is in the media that didn't grow up here, breaking news. A lot of them haven't grown up here, and a lot of them aren't really true Padres fans.
Yeah, guess
breaking
what?
Freaking news.
Guess what? Who cares? Did Peter Seidler grow up here?
It doesn't matter.
I mean,
it doesn't matter.
Cares?
My job is to
Did Manny Machado grow up here?
No, he didn't. He grew up in Miami.
Yeah.
My job is to cover this team. I've covered this team since 2015. All right.
Yeah. It's a really dumb argument, and for whatever reason, there's people that love making it. It's not just San Diego.
No,
by
they
the way.
love it.
It's a very, very stupid argument that I'm glad was made on the text line.
Oh yeah. Continue to make those dumb arguments. It just looks stupid.
70470. You can start your message with team if you'd like to weigh in here today. Kevin Acee is our Padres insider. We will ask him all the questions that need to be asked based on his article that he wrote today in the UT. About the Padres season. He says as the Padres season spirals, questions emerge about culture, cohesion, and chemistry. We'll continue to react to that on the other side. Plus, Kyle Glazer from Baseball America, he has read the article because I asked him. He'll comment on it coming up at 4:45. He's a great source for Padres baseball. He will join us coming up at 4:45. Kevin Acee at 5:05. We'll give away those Howl O Scream tickets. We're at Fair Play in North Park until 6. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us right now on Jon and Jim. All right, where does the blame fall here in addition to Manny Machado? Is it Peter Seidler, AJ Preller, Bob Melvin. As you read through this article from Kevin Acee today in the UT, Kevin will join us coming up at 5 p.m. Stay with us.
All right, this update is brought to you by Staples Stores. Padres, Oakland A's tonight up in Oakland, 6:40 first pitch. Game seems completely secondary as of today, with many things going on. And Seth Lugo, he will start tonight for the Padres. Padres have made a roster move. Matt Carpenter goes on the IL. G-Man Choi, if you remember him, he's back on the active roster. Last night, Eagles beat the Minnesota Vikings. Eagles are now 2-0 on the season. Austin Eckler, he is doubtful this weekend for the Chargers. And Aztecs, they take on Oregon State tomorrow, 12:30 kickoff. 10:30 a.m. is when our pregame coverage starts right here on San Diego Sports 760. And this update's been brought to you by Staples.
All right, Kevin Acee is going to join us coming up at 5:05. Kyle Glazer, Baseball America. He has written a ton on the Padres over the years. He'll join us at 4:45. An update in the Midwest League playoffs where Dylan Lesko is pitching. Fort Wayne needs a win to move on against the Dodgers affiliate. There is no score in the second inning. Texts are rolling in. We've had a ton of texts here today. 70470 started with team. Is there any you would like to read?
No. Brent, which one did you want to
He's talking about the 619 I Love Angry Jim, right, Brent?
Yes. I love Angry Jim. It's amazing you got a job in this town. The first thing any San Diego job application asks is, were you born here?
Right. Exactly.
Sorry, guys. I wasn't born here. Breaking news. I love that. And I kind of actually, it's interesting because people are like, oh, dude, you're a 49ers fan. It's crazy you grew up to be a Padres fan. Like, I cover the Padres, okay? I want the Padres to do well because that's the team I cover. That's the team I talk about every single day. We have literal shows, me and John, that are based around the Padres. So when they do well, we do well, and we like that a lot. I root for their success because their success is kind of our success. I think that the players that we cover are very interesting. I like watching Manny Machado play baseball. I like watching Juan Soto, Fernando Tatis. Like, I think those are really good baseball players to watch. But I mean, this whole thing, like, hey, you were born in this town. Why should we listen to you? All right, fine.
I actually here's the thing. I'm gonna toot our horn. I actually give something like our show or like the Darren Smith show even more credit because we've had to overcome being told that you'll lack credibility based on where your parents gave birth to you.
Right, my fault.
Yeah,
my fault.
That's the most. It's such a ridiculous argument. The fact that we've been successful, despite the fact that people will use that against us, actually says we've been more successful than. Like, if we were born here, apparently we'd be like the most successful show in the history of radio in San Diego.
Apparently,
this would be like the biggest show ever.
I mean, even if we weren't born
We'd
here,
be like Mike and the Mad Dog.
We'd be the greatest show ever.
Right? I'm gonna start. I'm gonna change my.
I'm done though. I'm over it. Whatever. Who cares?
I can tell you're definitely over it. I can tell.
Today's been a lot, dude. Today's been one of those days where I probably should not have interacted with people on Twitter.
No doubt.
That was stupid of me, especially guys with like 3 followers and telling me I'm an idiot for my whatever opinion. And then just today, man, just this article is, man, it's tough to see. It's tough to read. And yeah.
Okay, so a couple of things. Chelsea Jane's Washington Post retweeted this article. She also wrote, in addition to retweeting this article, there's no guarantee Bob Melvin loses his job. She wrote about managers of struggling teams and how the Cardinals today announced their manager will be back. There's been no indication given as of yet that Bob Melvin or Buck Showalter will lose their job. Potentially Boone in New York with the Yankees will. I found that interesting. There's been this discussion because we talk about like the levels of blame. Who's accountable here? Well, we know Manny Machado apparently has a level of accountability. Beyond that, it's not just Machado. We've all said that. Is it starting with Seidler? Is it starting with Preller? What role does Bob Melvin have in a rudderless ship if there's been 8 or 9 meetings and nothing's been rectified? But Chelsea Jane's writing, as she's retweeted Kevin's article today, there's no assurance or guarantee that Bob Melvin won't be back in 2024. I think a lot of people here believe that Bob Melvin won't be back based on what's happened here this year.
I think I just go back to something that we have said multiple times over the years. If you don't change anything, nothing's going to change.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have said that so many times in the past, and if you go in next year with a run it back mentality, just hoping things will be different, maybe they will be, but man, that is such a horrible way to run a franchise. Coming off of this disaster year, thinking that everything is fine and we just got unlucky, and if we just run it back, then things will be different because, hey, law of averages. Even though they tooted their own law of averages back of baseball card numbers all year long, and look what happened. Didn't pan out. So, like, the whole hope thing for next year, it's such a risky thing to do. And it's frankly, if you expect, this is going back to a culture thing, if your culture is a bunch of hope, man, you're doomed to fail from the start.
Yeah, but the problem is, you're right, it's like I don't really know what options they have. Manny Machado is not going anywhere. So if the root of the problem is Manny Machado, or is it? Is the root of the problem AJ Preller? Is the root of the problem Peter Seidler? Is it Bob Melvin? Is it the dynamic of the clubhouse beyond Manny Machado? But if the root of the problem has anything to do with the core of the team doesn't change. So I have a feeling we're going to be saying a lot of they ran it back, because who from the core of the team won't be back?
That's a great. I know. I know.
Maybe Juan Soto, but I don't know if we're big fans of that.
We said this, like, dude, they're in such a rock and a hard place now.
Yes.
That there's no quick fix. There's no easy out. There's no, that's what they should do scenario. Because that's what they should do scenario involves like things you don't want to do, which is trading away Juan Soto and, spending more money on players and capping yourself out with less flexibility. There's no easy fix here at all. And if the only fix that they have in mind is to just hope players have better years next year, it's a horrible mindset to have. And when you don't have a culture to back any of that hope up with, I say good luck. That's how
There's
I view
a little
it.
bit of it.
Like, good luck.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We see what you're doing, and we see how bad it is, and we see how every single other year there's a problem with your franchise from the top down, and you think that it's just, hey, we got to run it back with like a few little tweaks here and there.
I have a feeling. My guess is the organization, when they see this article, I'm guessing like Peter wakes up, texts the article to AJ. AJ texts it elsewhere. Players are texting each other about the article. And are they trying to immediately discredit it, or are they trying to rectify issues that have been brought to light based on his reporting?
Well,
right?
Here, maybe. And here's what I like truly don't get about the backlash today on this article. Now, there is a good amount of like, oh God, like eye rolling, like, well, you know, kind of saw this one coming from like smart, informed people.
Right.
And then you get the like blind faith, loyal Manny Machado's my guy. And I guess I get it, but you know, dude, it doesn't make sense to me when this article is based off of like quotes and sourced, you know, things from Kevin. Like, this is not an opinion hit piece. It'd be one thing if Kevin wrote an article saying that he thinks Manny Machado is the problem. He thinks that the culture in this organization is really bad because of Manny Machado. I'm upset today, and I think Padres fans should be upset today when you hear Manny Machado point blank say that he does not believe culture is an issue.
Right. Kevin didn't force him to say that.
No. Like, hey, what are we talking about here? Little League? Like, what, college baseball?
High school?
$50. Clubhouse is like. It doesn't matter that none of us like it in the Clubhouse. As long as we go out there and perform, like, those things all matter, Manny. They all coincide. They all matter. It all is like a cohesive thing that if you have a really good culture added with really good players, that is like almost an unstoppable force. But when you have a crappy culture with a bunch of me guys, you're doomed to fail.
I need to ask, though, was the article written with the premise that it was centered around Manny Machado? When he writes, according to virtually everyone queried, with more than 30 conversations, blah, 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 there's unanimous consensus that Machado controls the clubhouse and sets the tone and personality for the team. Is that because you were asking about Manny Machado?
No, he agreed in the article that he's like, yeah, I agree. I believe in the article.
Well, he said, I think everybody's a leader.
Well, okay. That's another sign of somebody that doesn't know how to lead.
Right.
When you're like, dude, everybody's a leader here.
I think we have 26 leaders.
When you are that guy, you take it upon yourself to be like, follow me.
But he didn't say that.
I know he didn't.
Yeah, I think we have 26. That's another way of saying there's no culture. He doesn't. Well, he also, again, he recognized that he says culture means nothing because, well, he doesn't take the lead. When he says we've got 26 leaders and it's not my job, that's basically saying we don't have a good culture. All right, Kyle Glazer. Let's get to Kyle Glazer.
Okay.
Kyle Glazer, Baseball America, is going to join us on the other side. Kevin Acee will join us coming up at 5:05. We've got Hal O'Scream tickets to give away as well. Stay with us on Jon and Jim. Kyle Glazer, Baseball America, with his reaction to what Kevin Acee wrote today in the UT and looking ahead for the Padres in 2024. Kyle Glazer, Baseball America. He'll join us next. All right, we're here until 6 o'clock. Again, Padres opening a weekend series in Oakland tonight, but the story really is about 2024 and beyond, and also what Kevin Acee wrote today in the Union Tribune, and Kevin will join us coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Right now, Kyle Glazer has been so good to us here on San Diego Sports 760 from Baseball America, back joining us, talking about the state of the Padres down the stretch and moving ahead. And Kyle, we always appreciate your time on Jon and Jim, and I know you saw the piece and read the piece from Kevin. Do you have a reaction to what you read here today in the Union Tribune?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that has been apparent for some time, that the Padres clubhouse is not functioning in a way that was optimal for a winning environment. I mentioned this on a BA podcast a while back for us at Baseball America. My first year as a Major League Baseball beat writer was covering the Padres in 2015. That was when you had Matt Kemp and BJ Upton and James Shields in the clubhouse, all guys who only cared about themselves, said the right things, but their actions never backed it up. And a lot of the other guys in the clubhouse just weren't the personality types to kind of step up and correct that. Justin Upton was a quieter guy. Will Myers, it was not his style. So that 2015 clubhouse had a lot of issues. And when I was in the clubhouse this year, earlier this season, I got a lot of 2015 vibes, and I even said that publicly back in May. Guys who were saying the right words, but their body language, their tones, they were very disengaged. They were not, it was very clear they were not in a place that was healthy as a clubhouse, and Kevin's article spoke about that today.
And I think one of the things that stood out to us the most, and I'd be curious to see how you feel about this, the, I guess, lack of importance about culture and How do you view that? Because for me, I view culture as a massive thing when it comes to a success of a franchise from top down. You might not win some years, but like more often than not, you're going to figure it out. How do you view culture and the importance of that in baseball?
It's a little bit of a chicken or the egg argument. Does winning begat good culture, or does good culture begat winning? I think they go hand in hand a little bit. It's a symbiotic relationship. I'll say it like this. You look at the Dodgers. This was a team that had a lot of starting pitching injuries this year. This was a team that the bottom half of their lineup was not performing. They had a lot of the same issues the Padres did. But one of the key differences was the way Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, the stars, the best players, they stay even keeled, they stay positive, they back it up with their actions, their work ethic, and they really set the tone in the clubhouse. You have guys like Jason Hayward who do the same thing. Clayton Kershaw is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he's always been a guy that sets the tone in a positive way. The Padres haven't always had that steady, even-keeled presence. This is a team that, and they've talked about this in years past, they ride the emotions. When things are going great, they're fired up, they're passionate, they can ride it as well as anyone. But when things go south, we have seen a lot of guys on this team kind of start pouting and not able to pull themselves out of it. That's been a recurring theme over the years, and I think that's where culture separates itself. The Dodgers leaders are a lot more even-keeled and stay positive no matter the circumstances, whereas the Padres guys tend to ride the wave more than is optimal.
Interesting. Kyle Glazer from Baseball America with us on Jon and Jim. All right, so Kyle, as you know, the Red Sox, changed at the top of their front office baseball operations. The Mets have made an overhaul over the course of the season, bringing in David Stearns. Padres have the third longest tenured GM in baseball in AJ Preller. Is there a fix? And if the Red Sox and Mets are making changes, why aren't the Padres making changes?
At the end of the day, it's the owner's call. And Peter Seidler has made very, very, very clear that he believes AJ Preller is the best man to lead the Padres now and in the future. Until that changes, I don't know if we're realistically going to see any kind of change. But it does have to be said that assuming the Padres finish this year with a losing record, which they are well on pace to, the Padres will have had a losing record in 7 of the 9 seasons that AJ Preller has been at the helm. That's obviously not a track record that begets a lot of confidence. Again, there have been positives. They made the NLCS last year. There's been a lot of good scouting and player development successes. But at the end of the day, what matters most is wins and losses at the major league level. And I think it's understandable that there's skepticism from the fan base, whether or not AJ Preller and his regime are the leadership group to achieve that.
Yeah, well, Peter, preaches consistency and continuity. So, if that's no other thing than consistency, that's pretty consistent to me. It's just the opposite direction there, Kyle. Just looking at, because we've talked a lot about today and over the last couple months, and even with you about, the culture and the things off the field that are issues and the clubhouse and players and the dynamic of everything, right? But if you're just looking at on the field, black and white, what this team needs for next year for it to be fixed, like where would you start? Like what would you start with? They need absolutely more pitching, or do they need better depth? Like what is the position of need that is the top of your list that in the offseason, regardless of who's the GM, which is probably gonna be Preller, that they need to go after the hardest?
Well, they need to make sure the pieces fit. They need a real first baseman who can hit like a first baseman, not moving Jake Cronenworth over. They have a glut of middle infielders. They really should trade one of them. They need to, get a real center fielder who can hit like a true championship caliber starter for a major league team. Trent Grisham can play good defense. The bat is not good enough for a team with World Series aspirations. I think those are the first two things: getting a true first baseman, getting a center fielder who's better offensively, and filling the DH spot with someone who is not past their prime, as they did with Nelson Cruz and Matt Carpenter coming into this year. They've got to upgrade the weak spots offensively. The best teams are dangerous 1 to 9. As good, even if all the Padres stars have their best years, if you have 3 holes at the bottom of your lineup, you're not going to be that successful. So they really need to lengthen the lineup, and they're going to need starting pitching. Yu Darvish is getting up there. Blake Snell's a free agent. We've seen this happen a few times now where you get to the end of the year and there's a lot of guys making starts who realistically you don't want making starts for you if you have playoff aspirations. They need to beef up the bullpen a little bit too in the middle. I mean, there's a lot of holes here, but first and foremost, they have to lengthen the lineup with pieces that fit. They need a first baseman. Going out and signing another shortstop, middle infielder, or a corner outfielder just because he's a quote unquote star would be the worst thing they could do.
So it's very easy, very simple fixes.
Right, exactly. By the way, could you argue, Kyle? I mean, what's the argument to get rid of Bob Melvin? Does that do anything? I mean, he's gotten rid of managers before. It hasn't necessarily done a ton. I mean, what do you think about Bob Melvin's future?
We're going to see what happens at the end of the year. I think there is no question. There is a lot of speculation that the way things have played out, maybe there's a sense that it might be best for the two to part ways. As to which side initiates that, potentially, we'll see. But at this point, again, it's all outside speculation, and we need to see what happens. I think that at the end of the day, the structural problems this team has, too shallow of a lineup, guys playing out of position, not enough rotation depth or bullpen depth, a new manager isn't going to fix that. That has to start with the decisions made at top of the front office. Otherwise, removing Melvin, bringing another manager, and continuing to build major league rosters like they have, nothing's going to change.
Kyle, great stuff as always. We always appreciate it, your perspective and your coverage in Baseball America. Kyle Glaser from Baseball America. Kyle, we'll catch up once the season comes to an end. Thank you.
My pleasure, guys. Anytime.
All right, Kyle Glaser. Coming up next, Kevin Acee. He wrote it today in the UT. It's caused a stir. As the Padres season spirals, questions emerge about culture, cohesion, and chemistry. Kevin Acee from Oakland joins us next.
All right, this update is brought to you by Staples Stores. Padres start a 3-game series in Oakland versus the A's tonight, 6:40. First pitch there, Seth Lugo on the mound for the Padres tonight. They actually made some moves today. Matt Carpenter went on the IL. If you remember, G-Man Choi is on this roster. He has been elevated to the active roster. And San Diego State, they take on Oregon State tomorrow afternoon, 12:30 kick. Our pregame coverage starts at 10:30 right here on San Diego Sports 760. And this update has been brought to you by Staples.
All right, San Diego and Southern California, what's going on? Final hour of Jon and Jim from Fair Play in North Park. The Padres, as you've mentioned in your updates, they will play baseball tonight against another team. That team would be the Oakland A's, game one of a 3-game series, but all eyes really on what Kevin Acee wrote earlier today in the UT and about what the Padres do to address it. He wrote, as the Padres season spirals, questions emerge about culture, cohesion, and chemistry. And Kevin, Jim, is going to join us in just a couple of minutes. There are a lot of questions to be asked. I'm sure it's been a pretty interesting day for Kevin, as he again has, been in the clubhouse today with the Padres players. He's also been in Bob Melvin's pregame press conference as well, which was about 20 or 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, I think I'd be interested to know, especially with, now a former player of this team, a current player on this team retweeting that former player in Will Myers, and Jerks and Profile retweeting Will Myers today. You have Yonder Alonso speaking about this article as well. You have national reporters reporting about this article. I'd be curious to see, what the vibe is in that clubhouse after, these things were published and quotes from Manny were published.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes, you need something like this to be brought to light to make real change. I'm curious, does the organization want to discredit it, or do they want to address it? Are these issues that need to be fixed, or do they see this as, it's easy to say that in the midst of a losing season? And the Padres, of course, have had a terrible season. And you look at Manny Machado's tenure with the Padres, one up, one down for 5 years, more down than up. You had 2019, 2021, and 2023. And yet 2020, short season, everything we've said is accurate. We don't know what would happen in 2020. If it was a full year, maybe the wheels would have fallen off. 2022 was a good season. Why has it gone sideways again? And Manny Machado is front and center on 3 of those teams. He got here in 2019, wheels fell off. 2021, wheels fell off.
Yeah.
2023, there were no wheels all season.
No wheels.
No wheels.
Right.
Wheelless.
They started the season. It's like the Family Guy show when Stewie is at the Mets game, and the announcer of the broadcast system's like, and the first pitch of the year, and the season's over.
Exactly.
Like, that's kind of how the season felt. It never got off the ground, ever.
All right, let's get to our insider. All right, today in the UT, as Padres season spirals, questions emerge about culture, cohesion, and chemistry. We found it to be fascinating, well-reported, and well-sourced. And the writer is Kevin Acee. He's our Padres insider. He's back with us on Jon and Jim. So, Kevin, we know it's been busy. We appreciate your time. What's been the reaction you have received? But I want to start with your unique dynamic, because you've been in the clubhouse today. You've been with the manager here today. What's been the reaction from the organizational perspective to what you illustrated and highlighted at length today in the UT?
Well, there hasn't been much. I mean, but like a part of that is like most people knew it was coming. Like this wasn't sprung on anyone. There wasn't anything in the article that Manny didn't know about. There wasn't anything that AJ Peller or Bob Melvin didn't know about. I mean, I don't mean like they knew every detail, but they knew what was coming, and they knew, especially Manny, in a very specific way. Manny and I talked today. That's like, you know, I'm not going to talk about that necessarily. I will say this: there is a much different dynamic between people of a certain age now and there were when I covered baseball 25 years ago, and that is that I would have had a very rough day today 25 years ago. That happened, but I certainly made I did not help myself by writing this article, which I hope speaks to people about how strongly I felt that the information was accurate and how important I felt it was to explaining the Padres season and their situation going forward.
Yeah, and I'm sure this is something that you've been working on for a while, and, you know, sitting down with Manny on Wednesday at Dodger Stadium, I think there's a lot of confusion about this piece about, you know, like, did Manny know that you were going to do this? And it seems like he did. And so my question is, like, when you sat down with Manny, was it clearly conveyed to him that the premise of this article, what it was going to be written about?
Yeah, I'm sorry I laughed. I don't understand how, but this is my world. See, my world is I always have to be accountable. I have to walk in the next day. So to me, I don't even understand how someone could think that I could spring this on Manny. I honestly, I don't understand that. Like, Manny knew everything that was going to be in this article. And so, yeah, like they're not like every detail. He didn't see the article. So, but I want to make it clear, like, zero surprises.
Can I ask this though, Kevin? Because really, out of a spot of you kind of explaining where you're coming from with this piece, was the premise of the article what role Machado played in the disappointing season, or was the premise of the article why has this season been disappointing?
Let's see. I tried to really bend over backwards to make it clear that Manny doesn't, like, this isn't Manny's fault. Like Manny didn't think this season, but being who he is, that there may have been some things that could have been done differently for, you know, that things could have been different. Look, there's things that other people could have done differently too. But one guy has the dominant personality. One guy has the $350 million contract. One guy has carried them to 2 playoff appearances in the previous 3 years. So there is, and, you know, again, the dominant personality. There just is a dynamic that is happening in there that, you know, probably from my understanding, not probably, definitely from my understanding, I was hedging, like, because I'm not on this team, but from my understanding, it's something that needs to be worked through as they go forward. Listen, I thought Manny's point is the exact point that I've made all along. Wait a minute, like, they won in 2022. But, you know, sometimes winning masks things. It doesn't mean that everything's okay. Maybe a couple personalities that were in there last year were not. Maybe a couple guys that had more experience than Manny were not. It was very clear to everyone that this was Manny Machado's clubhouse this year. And if that's the case, along with all the accolades comes a lot of responsibility.
Kevin, when you, I think the first thing that me and Jon talked about today was his, I guess, thoughts on culture. The culture of a team, the culture to him, not really meaning as much. If you just go out there and perform on the field, that's all the culture that you need. What did you make of his thoughts about culture and the importance of it? And if you could just relay, because, you know, he mentioned, like, what is this, college baseball? What is this, you know, high school baseball? Like, is he saying, like, straight up to you, like, the culture of a team is not important?
I don't know that he's saying that straight up. He certainly, clearly, does not believe in that as strongly as some others. Manny's definition of leadership is essentially what Manny is, right? A guy who busts his butt to be on the field every day, performs at a high level, generally speaking. And, you know, if you watch him and you say, hey, that's what I want to be, then like, that's a good example, right? That's his definition of leadership. Hey, it might be mine. You and I aren't important. What's important is there are a lot of people in the game on other successful teams, guys who come from other successful teams. that believe that when a team isn't going well, especially when a team isn't going well, there are little things that can make a difference. And those little things were not happening this year.
Kevin Acee is our Padres insider. He's joining us from Oakland. Again, he wrote in the UT about the Padres and their season here in 2023. The headline, questions emerging about culture, cohesion, and chemistry. So regarding this idea that Manny wasn't following up his words in team meetings with his actions, did it surprise you to hear from Padres players that in fact was occurring with Manny Machado?
I mean, I've been working on this a long time, and I've covered the team a long time. And no, I mean, like, I guess it would surprise. The surprise would be that things would be said and then not done. I guess that's a surprise, yeah. But look, Manny's on his own program in a way that Juan Soto's on his own program, in a way that, you know, Fernando Tatis Jr. is on his own program, in a way, you know, like you reach a level and you have done things, and I should especially say Manny, right? Like, more games than any player in the major league since 2015. Has the 9th highest WAR in that span. So he has the ability and the durability. And how has he done that? He's done it the way he's done it. There is zero problem with that. I don't think that anyone has a problem with that. When a team is searching for a leader and a man has sort of like stepped into that role, and then some things that are said aren't followed through on, well, then that is maybe where the issue comes. And then maybe when that guy can't be, or people feel like, again, I'm not on the team, when people feel like that guy can't be held accountable, then that's where issues would arise. So that's all. And I hope I painted in the story as well, like, they got other problems that you could argue are bigger than this one. Yeah. But that when you're talking about a team that's 0-11 in extra innings, that is 6-22 in one-run games, that has been so incredibly inconsistent. I mean, the swings between this team are amazing, from looking like exactly like we thought they would to, you know, then what they've been more often is amazing. And when that, people say, can be traced to a lack of leadership and a lack of unity and cohesion and engagement, that should fall to a leader, be that Manny Machado, be that another player or a group of players or Bob Melvin.
Kevin, you know, talking to players in that clubhouse about what, you know, you were talking to Manny Machado about, did you get the sense that these players, as far as, you know, anonymity goes, like, did they want this to get out? Like, do you feel like there was a sense in this clubhouse that there are problems in there that they can't fix because maybe they're not, you know, the clubhouse leader, or they're not paid the most money, or they don't have the ability to truly fix these problems, but maybe that if they can convey them and have these things come out to the public and you know, in print with, you know, that these are the types of things that need to happen because that change needs to be made, or some change needs to add in that clubhouse.
Right. And I wrote that I thought it was notable that the reason that some guys were okay with this getting out is they felt like it needed to. That, you know, things come to light sometimes, or put in the light, that then, you know, maybe that's how things get worked out. We can all have our opinions about, like, why did it have to come to that, this, that. I'm just writing how it is. And I mean, I wish I could stress to people how strong this personality is. Like, Manny owns a room. And anybody that denies that, and by the way, even if there were people that maybe would disagree in this organization with some of the characterizations in there, and we have to remember that, like, just because I talked to 8 players, which is actually a remarkably high number, we're talking about almost a third of the players on the roster, that there's still a bunch of other players, right? And, you know, but there's always going to be differences of opinion on small things. No one is going to deny to you that Manny Machado commands the room.
Kevin Acee is our Padres insider. He's with us right now on Jon and Jim. I'm just curious, Kevin, from your perspective, why was it that Bob Melvin was able to get through to the team a year ago And this year, and again, there's a number of dynamics at play, but there's been these 8 or 9 meetings, some of them maybe players only, some of them with the coaching staff. Why hasn't Bob Melvin's message resonated with this group this year after seemingly it did a year ago?
This I don't know for sure, but I certainly have talked to people about it, and the feedback that I've gotten, you know, it was new, and they were going well. Remember, they started real hot last year. There are new dynamics in the clubhouse this year, for sure, right? Like, basically, for the entire season, Manny would be the guy that was here, right? You know, Eric Hosmer had more service time. Craig Salmon had more service time. Manny's a big believer in that, and there were other voices in the clubhouse. And then the guys this year that have that sort of service time and that sort of gravitas are new to the team. One guy who has a ring is 24 years old. And so there's like, while I actually would tend to be more like agreeing with Manny on that one. And actually I've said it quite a few places and all that, like, well, wait a minute, what worked last year? Why did, blah, blah. As I explained to Manny, and I think I put in the story, like, I was real close to writing some of this stuff last year. And then they started winning. And you know what? This kind of stuff goes on in a lot of clubhouses, and I feel a real responsibility to not blow stuff out of proportion. That's another reason you can believe that I believe that this was the right time and that the story had merit, is that I actually wrote it. Because, like, last year, things weren't going great. And then they started to win. So winning can mask a lot of things. It doesn't mean that things are drastically different. Because believe me, if you think I wanted to write this story, then you don't have any idea. I'm not saying you guys, if someone thinks they don't have any idea what my job is or what I have to go through after I write a story like this. I ask so many questions. As I said in this story, at least 30 interviews. And it might have been, 1.5 times that. And it, by the way, again, if we're talking, and I remember I mentioned this to Manny too, like, there was stuff last year, and then I started hearing stuff about this season in April. Let's count the months since then. Like, it's been a long time. And so there was a lot that went into this story. And I believe, after pushing back on a lot of things, like, hey, what about going to the NLCS? That there's a lot of difference this year. And we just went over a few of them. So there we are.
Yeah, I hear you, Kevin. Going back to, April that you just mentioned there, I actually was going to ask about, the start of this season. And it feels like, and tell me if I'm wrong, it feels like during the winter meetings when the Padres were so heavily going after big name guys like Trey Turner, Aaron Judge, and then they signed Xander Bogaerts to a $280 million contract. And then we get to spring training, and the big story is Manny is deciding he's going to opt out. Do you think that the offseason of the Padres going after these big name guys, instead of potentially after having an MVP season like Manny had last year, giving maybe that money to Manny first instead of going out and going to get other guys first, do you think that played a factor at all into this season with the dynamic of the clubhouse and with Manny Machado?
So what's happening is you're breaking up a lot. And since my phone has been working really well, I know if Darren Smith listens to this, they're going to blame my phone. But let's understand I'm at the Oakland Coliseum. That it's probably
that's true, yeah.
Right? Like, this is like I'm in the Bermuda Triangle. So I want to make sure, you have to repeat the whole question. But, like, the gist of it about the offseason and the big names, and was that, what was the question again?
It was back to the big names, the Padres going after the big names, potentially throwing out all this money to these big names instead of Manny first. And then the big storyline going into spring training this year was Manny's going to opt out. Do you think that played any factor into this season with Manny and the clubhouse dynamic that, this organization wanted to give all this money to other players first before Manny Machado?
I don't know that I can draw that straight line. No. I mean, no. I don't think like that Manny, I don't think it affects Manny. Got his money. Almost everybody got their money.
Yeah.
So there may have been some other issues. Like, certainly, obviously, Manny responded a certain way when everybody got their money. But, then he did get his money. And I do think there's stuff to be talked about. Like, I'm not saying anyone isn't working hard or playing hard or anything. But there is something to be talked about all these guys having, guaranteed contracts. Basically the Padres are who they are for a while, like in terms of their core. So they better get it figured out.
Kevin, one more for me before you go. Do you have any reaction to what former players, former Padres, and others have said about the article on social media? Whether it's Yonder Alonso, I saw Will Myers replied to the UT's tweet and was critical of the article. I may be missing someone. Jerkson Profar, I believe, has retweeted what Will Myers had said. So, do you have any reaction to the reaction you've received from some of those, players or former players?
I probably don't. I mean, look, there's a lot of stuff that I keep private. Also, Yonder and Will have my number, but they chose to put me on blast and defend their guy. That's fine. That's totally fine, especially Yonder. I thought it was a little comical that Yonder's follow-up tweet, which I saw in the awful announcing article, was that this wasn't about Manny, it was him. It's like, yeah, okay. I didn't have any problem with Yonder's first tweet. I expected it. That's his brother-in-law, and there's a love between those guys that I got no problem with that. I got a lot of respect for it. Will's comment that he was not a part of this year's team, I think, is something that should probably be taken into consideration.
Kevin, really good reporting. Yeah, I figured that. I thought so. Kevin, we knew, when you write something like this, like you said, there's going to be obviously a lot of opinions offered, especially in the social media age, but good reporting. Good job with your source reporting. We found it fascinating. We'll do it again next week. Enjoy the weekend in Oakland, and thank you.
Right on. Take care.
Thoughts? Well, first of all, we will react later this hour. We'll get rid of the back page and react.
Yeah.
We do have JB Long is going to join us weekly from the Rams and your Niners, by the way, this weekend. My thoughts are he did his job. You may disagree with some of the premise or some of the areas in which he took it, but he wasn't really offering opinion. He did his job.
My takeaway from it is that anybody out there that thinks that these players, and especially Manny Machado, didn't know what was coming today with this piece, you just heard from Kevin right there, like plain as day. Manny knew exactly what was coming out today. He knew exactly what was being, no, not to a T, but like he knew exactly what Kevin was doing. So if you out there think that this is some type of hit piece, I don't know what to tell you, man. I don't know what to tell you. So listen to Kevin there, believe him or not, but I tend to believe him because this is his job. And whether you like him or not, I think that this is reporting that needs to be done for this team for this year because it's been a disaster and things need to be said.
And to his point, he's done himself no favors. To what benefit is writing this piece?
Right. Why would he do this?
If anything, he might put the organization in a better spot in 2024 based on what he wrote here today in 2023. JB Long, voice of the Rams. We'll get you ready for Niners and Rams this weekend, plus more reaction to Kevin Acee's article today in the UT next.
Thanks, Daniel, for the super chat. Appreciate it. He says, did Manny really call for players to step up during these team meetings and then not show up? I think Kevin answered that. I don't think it's all on Manny. I think it's a team collective, thing. But, if Manny's the leader of your team and he doesn't do things that he says, then yeah, it's gonna be a problem. Thanks for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Guys, if you want to send in supers to support the channel, we'll get to them all during the breaks. What do you think of the Kevin Acee interview there? Give us your thoughts. Make sure to like the channel and subscribe, and we'll talk to you in a minute here.
All right, more reaction to what Kevin Acee wrote today in the UT about the Padres culture, plus JB Long, voice of the Rams, get us ready for NFL Week 2 next.
All right, this update is brought to you by Staples Stores. Padres, Oakland A's tonight, 6:40 first pitch. Seth Lugo on the mound for the Padres. Moving over to Aztecs, they play Oregon State tomorrow afternoon in Corvallis. 12:30 kickoff, 10:30 a.m. is when our pregame coverage starts right here on San Diego Sports 760. And this update's been brought to you by Staples.
All right, there's a lot to react to. We just had Kevin Acee on the show about the Padres struggles and the questions about the Padres culture moving forward with Manny Machado. We will get back to that conversation in about 15 minutes. It's also week 2 in the NFL. You can listen to the Rams-Niners.
NFL.
Every single week you can listen to the Rams on San Diego Sports 760. It's Rams-Niners this Sunday at 1:05. Again, you can listen right here on San Diego Sports 760. JB Long, voice of the Rams, back with us on San Diego Sports 760, and Jon and Jim. JB, it's great to have you back. We appreciate your time here in San Diego, and I'm just curious, does after last week's result, the win in Seattle, is that changing Rams fans' potential expectations for LA here in 2023?
Jon and Jim, it's great to be back with you. It was refreshing. It was rejuvenating. It was encouraging. In terms of changing expectations, it's a good question, and I think you got to be aware of the whiplash in the National Football League from week 1 to week 2. Like, don't overreact to the first thing you see. But the first thing we saw was a reminder that Matthew Stafford is good at quarterbacking, and that Aaron Donald being on the field makes a difference, and that Sean McVay is one of the great coaches in the sport. And I think you saw all of those things on display against the Seahawks. Whether or not it translates to the 49ers game this weekend, I think San Francisco has one of the best, if not the best, rosters in football. We shall see. San Francisco's had the better of that rivalry of late, at least in the regular season. But yeah, if you're a Rams fan and you're saying, I just don't know what to expect, we've been downtrodden this offseason. Pundits are saying our window is shut. Maybe wait and see. Maybe wait and see how they survive this first month-long gauntlet.
And, JB, I think one of the biggest stories or brightest, spots and stories to come out of week 1 of the NFL was, Puka Nacua. I hope I'm saying that right. Am I saying that right?
You nailed it. You must have claimed him on your fantasy team this week.
I tried, but I was like 5th in the waiver wire, and he went before me. So, unfortunately, I couldn't claim him. But just talk about, like, where did this guy come from? Is it more of like a system that he was put into that's really good for wide receivers, and he also has a really stud quarterback, or is it this guy is actually a really good player?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of an all of the above. Comes from a football family, was a one-time USC commit who started his career at Washington, finished at BYU. For a day 3 pick, super impressive to come out with 119 receiving in your first pro outing. I think what worked in Puka's favor is that, unfortunately for the Rams, Cooper Kupp, who's still on injured reserve with his hamstring, was not much of a participant in the offseason program. But unlike last year, Matthew Stafford was. And so Nacua got this Sean McVay crash course and earned the trust of his quarterback. And, compared to where the Rams were last season, where Stafford was kind of arm load injury managing, I think you really saw the difference, where if Stafford's well protected, he can make a lot of guys look like wide receiver 1 for your fantasy football team or for the Los Angeles Rams.
JB Long's the voice of the Rams. Rams and Niners Sunday at 1:05. I feel like also with the Rams, it's like anytime you have Aaron Donald on your defense, you have a chance. What role does Aaron Donald play? Has he faced Brock Purdy before with the Niners or not?
He has not. Brock Purdy kind of came after the early season matchups with the Rams last year. So if you're looking for a reason to doubt Mr. Irrelevant, maybe that's the last remaining one, because otherwise he's been superb. But yeah, until you survive first encounter with Aaron Donald, I guess withhold judgment.
JB, how are the Rams viewing this game on Sunday? Are they viewing it as like a road game? Because we know that, SoFi is going to be filled with 49ers fans. How do they, and they're also wearing their white jerseys on Sunday. They're letting the Niners wear their home reds. Are they going into this Sunday like with that mentality, even though they're playing at home, that this is a road game?
Well, I think the white jerseys are a fan favorite, and that's the one that they beat the 49ers in the NFC Championship game and won the Super Bowl and won that. So, but yeah.
I try to forget that, JB. I try to forget it.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think maybe the most impressive thing about last week's win is not that they won, but how they won. They went on the road in Seattle, which is deafening, with a bunch of new pieces on their offensive line. Didn't have a false start, didn't have a procedural penalty. Matthew Stafford was only hit twice, was not sacked at all. Can they replicate that against perhaps the most ferocious pass rush in the National Football League? I don't know, but I don't think they're going to be shook by the environment inside SoFi Stadium because, frankly, they're used to it. So that will work against them, but it won't catch them off guard. I don't think it will fluster them.
JB Long is the voice of the Rams. Like you said, it's only been a week plus a Thursday night football game that involved a couple of NFC teams. But, what do you make of the NFC here, and how do you expect it to shake out as you – obviously, it feels more wide open than the AFC with their quarterbacks, though you have teams like the Niners and the Eagles at the top of it. But what do you make of the NFC heading into the year?
Well, I think that's why the Rams front office was reluctant to call this a rebuild. Like, as long as you have McVay, Stafford, Donald, Kupp, you're going to be a tough out for anybody, and you're not going to be tanking. Let's be serious. So I think that was a resounding victory from week one in that regard. And I've always felt that the Rams, at their best, if the rookies stand up, can be an NFC playoff team. Is their roster on paper as good as San Francisco's or Philadelphia's or maybe Dallas's? No, if I'm being fair-minded, probably not. But can they be as good as any of those teams for 4 quarters on a particular day? Yes. And for that reason, I think they're very much on a soft, wild card playoff bubble. It's way too early for those conversations. But if you're asking where can the Rams fan base set its aspirations, I think they're totally entitled to do that. I will say the undercurrent, kind of the big implication of this week's game is San Francisco already has a win on the road at Pittsburgh. If they get another in the division at SoFi Stadium, you kind of look at what they have next. Thursday night football against the Giants. New York was embarrassed by the Cowboys in week 1 on their home field at the Meadowlands. Then San Francisco gets another Levi's home game against Arizona, right now 32 out of 32 in any power ranking, right? So there's a very real possibility that the San Francisco 49ers start 4-0 and will be in commanding control of the NFC West if the Rams don't pick them off early in week 2.
JB, when should we expect Cooper Kupp to return for the Rams?
Sean McVay admitted today, which I was surprised to hear him say as much, that he's optimistic that it'll be week 5 as soon as he's eligible to come off injured reserve. So I think that's great news. And I cannot wait to see, hopefully, him, Puka Nacua, Van Jefferson, Tutu Atwell, all in on one offense. I think it has a chance to be super dynamic. It gives you a sense of just how close Cooper Kupp was to contributing in September. It must have been a hard decision, knowing how critical these games are up front and getting off to a good start, that they put him on injured reserve. I think it was almost self-discipline, Jon and Jim, that they want to make sure there's no rushing Cooper Kupp, and that when he's back, he's returning to peak performance and not just returning to be dressed in the lineup.
JB, we're looking forward to this weekend, and we're looking forward to our conversations with you throughout the course of the season, hopefully on Fridays as we carry Rams football for you here in San Diego once again on San Diego Sports 760. And again, be listening Sunday at 1 o'clock, Rams and Niners. JB, thank you as always, and we hope to catch up again next week.
I got the Bruins tomorrow, and I was studying UCLA and the Aztecs this week, and I thought of you guys, so thank you for reaching out. It's great to be back on your program.
We appreciate that, JB.
Appreciate it.
All right, JB Long, great play-by-play voice with the LA Rams. All right, our reaction to our conversation with Kevin Acee and what he wrote today in the UT, that's next on Jon and Jim. All right, we react to our conversation with Kevin Acee about the Padres culture issues and more next on Jon and Jim. By the way, if you missed our conversation with Kevin Acee, it'll be at sportssd.com momentarily. It'll be on the iHeartRadio app. It'll be wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening to us via a phone or on a podcast, please subscribe. Year-round content for San Diego sports fans. Again, nobody talked to Kevin Acee other than us today. We were, fortunate to be in that spot here
Thanks,
on
Kevin.
San Diego Sports 760. So again, if you missed our conversation earlier this hour, find it on YouTube. Search for Jon and Jim 760. Find it on the iHeartRadio app. Find it at wherever you get your podcasts. Find that conversation with Kevin Acee. It was a really fascinating look at the work he put in to produce a piece like that, looking into the inner dynamics of the Padres.
Right. I think, again, the biggest takeaway for me is that everybody knew this was coming. He mentioned there was no surprises here. There was nobody that was caught off guard. There was nobody that, what? What are you printing? And even I think if there wasn't, I don't view this as the biggest, quote unquote, this word is being used a lot today, hit piece.
No,
right?
It wasn't like, hey, Manny, tell us about your dogs. And then he wrote this piece about how he's been a disaster in the clubhouse of the Padres. Clearly is not the guy covers the team daily.
Yeah. He's in the clubhouse all the time.
Ask yourself what makes the most sense. It's a hit piece, or he wrote something that he's been sourcing out for the better part of a year plus.
Right. I think this is something he even mentioned that was on the verge of being written last year.
But then they won.
And they made the NLCS.
Right.
And so, that masked it, I don't know if I want my team, if I'm a fan of, to have it be, the only way these issues won't be anything is if they just win. I don't want these issues at all. I don't want to be a fan of a team that is the only way that there won't be any issues is if they win. That's, to me, bad. Now, you could also say, losing teams always have issues. Well, yeah, losing teams always really do have issues because they don't even have good players on them usually. This team has the opposite. They have really good players on it. So to just sit there and think, well, I just want them to win. And if they win, then none of these issues will be a problem to an extent. But like Kevin said, and like we saw last year, and we talked about it, we all forget because of the NLCS run, like there were issues with this team. There were multiple clubhouse meetings. There were clubhouse meetings that weren't reported on. There were there were problems going on with that team. Hell, going back to 2021 that, has manifested in huge ways 2 of the last 3 years.
If I was interviewing Peter Seidler today or at his postseason press conference, my first question would be, do you plan to address the issues brought up by Kevin Acee in his article in the middle of September? Is what he wrote of value to the organization where they recognize the failures and want to do something about that or not? Yeah. Like, is this something the organization recognizes as legitimate, or do they want to find a way to discount it like Will Myers did today, and like Jurickson Profar did today, and like Yonder Alonso did today?
And a lot of fans, like, I am sorry, but some of you guys out there need to, check your feelings at the door here and about whatever you feel about Kevin Acee. I think Kevin Acee is pretty damn good at he's pretty good. And when he reports things, he's not doing it just to do it for spite or for whatever. We talked about this. We even asked him, this is something he's been working on for a good minute now.
Mm-hmm.
He told us he would not put this out there if he didn't feel confident in it. And no legitimate reporter would do that. Does Kevin make mistakes? Yes. Do all of us make mistakes? Yes. But this is not an opinion piece. This is a straight up sourced piece and something that he sat down and talked with Manny Machado about before he published it. That's what good reporters do.
Interesting note from someone in the chat, Moises, who says Machado could have taken the high road and owned it in the article. Right. Manny Machado, when asked to speak with Kevin for 30 minutes, when made aware of the premise of the article, could have gone one or two ways with his answers to the questions that were being asked. He could have taken ownership and responsibility and accountability, which, by the way, I think to some extent he may have. It's not the lead, though, when you see quotes like, culture, I don't really believe in it. What is this, high school baseball or college baseball? But it is a fair point. You had a 30-minute sit down with Kevin Acee. He told you what he was writing about. You still elected to give him the answers that you did, which Kevin published here today.
Yeah. So, if you're out there and you, first off, don't like Kevin Acee, second off, see this, and then don't even read the article. I think there's a lot of people out there that just didn't read the article. You would understand and know that what Kevin's doing right now is what a reporter should be doing. Okay. It's what all reporters of bad teams and bad franchises should be doing. They should be looking deeper. They should be talking to people about issues that are not just on the field, right? They should be talking about how can things be fixed? How can this not happen again? So go back, listen to our interview with Kevin. I think it's pretty black and white as to this piece being sourced heavily, and make your own opinion, but that's how I feel.
Whose sweep will we talking about on Monday, the Padres or the A's?
No,
if you missed anything today, sportssd.com, iHeartRadio app, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify. Find us on YouTube now. Search Jon and Jim 760. Please follow us on social media at Jon and Jim, JONAND. JIM. We're back Monday at 3. Join us for Aztec football tomorrow at 12:30 with pregame coverage at 10:30. San Diego State and Oregon State. For Brent and Jim, I'm Jon. Keep it here. It's the all-new San Diego Sports 760. Okay.
Started.